I am Eric Manning, and I'm with my friend Stuart Elliott, and we've started a podcast named Through the Abyss, where we discuss and confront issues which often start in childhood and how they manifest in our adult lives. The images you will see are related to the topics of our discussions. They have been painted over the last 20 plus years and can be seen on the website ericmanning.info.
Well, Eric, we're sitting here looking at your painting, Dose of Reality. Do you remember when you painted it, approximately?
About 20 years ago.
Okay, and you were at the Crossroads?
It was a place called the Arts Incubator on, I believe it's West 22nd Street, pretty close to 18th in Baltimore, right next to downtown Kansas City.
Okay. And I'm looking at it, and I'm noticing it doesn't look quite like other pieces of art I've seen. It's not on canvas. So what were you doing there? What is it?
Yeah, so this is on board. I just went to Home Depot, I remember, and just got, a regular piece of plywood, like a 1/4-inch plywood, or I believe it is. And there were other artists in the building that were woodworkers, and we could go in the shop and sand it down, and then you have to prime that, and I just had the opportunity to do that, and I wanted to see what it looked like, and it looks really cool. I would actually like to paint on board again someday. I think it looks great, but it's really heavy. That's the problem with board.
It is, and the other thing I've noticed with canvas, when you try to photograph a painting you've done on canvas and you zoom in on it, you can really see the weave of the canvas. And with board, you don't see that, do you?
Yes, no, it's nice and smooth and flat, and the ability to blend colors is excellent on board because once you've sanded it down and you've primed it, it's just smooth as a baby's butt. You're just back and forth, and I could see it, in the painting, how, wow, that was excellent blending, which is one of the things that I like to do more than anything with color, is blend them together and make them look really smooth, or just the transition look very.
And I've really seen that with a lot of your pieces. There's a lot of blending that you love to do that, and it looks so good when you do. So.
And this is why I use oil paint now, because the blending is so great.
You can't do that with acrylic, is that right?
You can, it just goes so fast.
What do you mean it goes fast? It dries fast?
It dries way too fast for me anymore. And I believe that is acrylic on board there. So I was just transitioning. I think that was the year that I was transitioning from acrylic to oil. Not that I dislike acrylic at all, but oil is just so much more blendable, and it dries. It's kind of a pain in the butt.
It dries slow,
but for this board piece, this acrylic worked just fine, because I was just, there wasn't that many colors. It was just really hot colors, mostly, reds and yellows and oranges that I was doing in it. So it worked.
So you decided you wanted to try board as opposed to canvas to see how that worked for you as an artist. When you sat down in front of this board, what was going through your mind? Like, what images were you gonna put on this board? And what were you thinking, and what was going on in your head or your heart or any of that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting of how artwork comes out of me and out of other people too, that not everybody does this kind of art. And there's a lot of people that'll just do organic landscapes, which are fine. They can be amazing as well. But, my artwork has always been comes with a purpose for me, to get something out from the inside out that I'm not maybe even consciously aware of at the time. I remember being in a very emotional and psychological stressful time. And so this is kind of what comes out during that. And it had to, for me, It had to come out. If I don't get something like this out, this is trauma, and this is trauma. This is not only harsh, childhood relationships, with my parents, but it goes to the point of trauma. So if trauma stays in you, it can have a really deadly, damaging effect upon your mind, body, and soul. That's what I believe. That's what I've experienced.
Okay, wow. So specifically, though, I mean, the name Dose of Reality, did you come up with that name before you even started? Or after you started working on it, realized, oh, that's what this is?
Afterwards. Yeah, it's really interesting so I just started with the face with my, and I never did, no, I wouldn't say I never did, but I've done animated art before. So this is one of the few, that's not really true. I just do it in a different way. I don't usually do animated art with a skin color like this. I usually do it in a ghostly image, imagery, kind of way, or I do, kind of in a more of a spiritual or mystical way, but this is one of the first ones I've ever done that has been like, oh, well, what is my animated self? How would I do myself in the flesh and animated, and in motion, and the big part of it is being in motion in the piece, like doing something and acting towards or going towards something.
Well, it's very, very distinctive how you did that. It's amazing, and below your face with your body, it's so sinewy and just you can just tell, you can see the movement of your body with your arms moving around. It's pretty amazing, I think, how that is. So you started with the face. Then what came next?
Then the body. So then I started doing the body, which I'm learning. This is a learning period. I've only been painting for like a few years. I've been sketching for a while. I've always done artwork. I've always been artistic in the sense of just sketching, and mostly just sketching, with pencil or colored markers or, something like colored pencils maybe. But I just started painting like 3 years maybe before this. So I'm just learning how to do, muscles and just how to do motion. And it's just coming. I don't know what I'm doing. I have a degree in applied human science, not art, but I've always been on the artistic side and very moved by art and music,
Well, it's to me, it's just amazing how you've done that, especially with no formal training, artistic training. I just think that's really, really great. I've always loved that rose. Where did that come from?
So the rose is interesting.
Does it represent something?
Yeah, so it represents, something popping out of nothing, or just, roses don't grow there are desert roses, but they're kind of a phenomenon, or kind of, they're mystical, or they just, there's no water in the desert, so roses don't grow, abundantly or at all. I've heard of them before. They usually grow on cactuses, or cacti, or something like that. But yeah, and it comes from a U2 song that I really like. I'm a big U2 fan, and I was listening to, I think, a song called In God's Country, and he talks about a desert rose. I see a desert rose, and what Bono meant, or, the Edge meant by writing this, I'm not sure, but this is just what came out of it. For me, it was relating to me in this way. It's just, oh, well, something can come out of nothing, if you're able to get it out or purge it, or just, be with your darkness in the moment, then something good, and you're honest or open about it, something good can come out of it. So that's what the rose represents.
And speaking of desert, that the whole background motif looks very desert-like. With, as you mentioned, the reds and the yellows, and it almost looks apocalyptic as well. with the sky reflecting those same colors, basically.
Yes, the dark clouds.
And then the yellow and the reds in the sky, too, above the horizon back there. That's a great, bringing those together there on the horizon. And, of course, the cacti, as you said, are in there as well. Now, obviously, one of the most prominent parts of this is the arm reaching down from the upper left-hand corner.
Yes.
Is that arm anybody's in particular?
Yeah, so the arm represents me receiving, or the arm represents the spirituality, that I'm experiencing, at the time. This is what, is going on inside of me, which on the other side of that, we'll talk about the heart later, but obviously I'm just putting my heart out there, and the only way that can happen is to receive a reality that is deeper, most of my life has been deeper than something I've been able to handle or cope with because of trauma in my life, or because of abuse in my life, or because, and it's not just the act of getting, say, hit or sexually abused or, scalded, or scolded, or I think the biggest part of abuse comes from the nature of how a relationship develops between a child and a parent, or the parent to the child. Really, that's how it starts.
Or the abused to the abuser.
Yeah, exactly. Which is usually, when you're talking childhood, it's, rarely the child that abuses the parent. And if the child is abusing the parent back, it's usually from another parent, I believe, or from the parent.
It comes from somewhere.
It comes from somewhere.
When there is an abuser, that abuse comes from somewhere. They didn't just invent, the abuser didn't just invent that behavior out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There's a basis in their life somewhere that compels them to abuse someone else.
Absolutely. That's been my experience. Absolutely. And, again, that something comes from, or that abuse comes from a relationship, I believe, every single time. Doesn't come from my bad mood at the day, or because I had a nasty meal for breakfast and I'm pissed off about it. That's just a trigger for something greater that's going on. And why? I think the question is, a lot of the times, like, why would somebody want to treat me like that? Why would my own father want to abuse me like that? Why would my own mother want to abuse me like that? Why would they want to manipulate me and lie to me and tell me they're good parents when they're abusing me at the same time? To me, that's insane. And that can drive a child to a level of insanity or pain or distress that they can't get out of very easily, or at all, if at all. It takes a miracle to get out of that. And so the hand, or the arm with the hand, with that little dose, that spoon on the end of it, is the dose of reality, meaning it has mercy to it, or it has understanding to it, it has clarity to it, it has clear communication with it, it has a deeper level of, even I could say, redemption to it. It's just, when you're going into that place, to me, the good does not come without facing the bad.
Oh yeah, for sure. And in the midst of, in the midst of the abuse, but even in the midst of the after the abuse, when you're living with having been abused for so long, and it does seem like a desert. And that is your reality. This desert you're living in. For a lot of people, they're living in a desert and they may not have connected the dots enough to realize where it came from or ask enough questions, enough why questions, to get down to that level of where that abuse came from and why you were abused. And that is your reality. So this is the hand of God, in essence, saying there is an answer for all of this, and this is the dose of reality for you. Take this into your mouth and on your tongue, and let it become a part of you, and to open up your eyes to say this is what really happened, and this is what is now really happening to you. And I would want that for anybody in that position who's been abused to whatever level. Whether it's physical abuse and getting beaten, or sexual or emotional, or whatever it is, or even a little bit or a lot, to realize this comes from somewhere, and to be able to again ask enough questions. Okay, why are they abusing you? Why did they hit me? Okay, and then take it one. Every time you answer that question, ask the next one. One more level deeper, and eventually you'll get to a root, elemental level of where this is coming from.
I believe it is possible when it seems impossible in the world, and I've heard a lot of people say that's not possible. You're just foolish. You're a fool for trying to talk about this stuff, or you're trying to figure it out, or there's no answer to that. It just is what it is, and you have to accept it and just survive the best you can. You just get by that. Well, there is no, in this state of being, to me, there is no best you can. There's being alone in the desert, isolated, all by yourself, and your family and the people around you are not communicating. They refuse to communicate the truth about what's really going on. And I see that's the big problem with society, relationships inside,
We see so many people talk about relational issues between people and societal issues, which is just another level of relationship. And they tend to look at a problem, some behavior from someone they don't like, the behavior they don't like from someone, and they'll have some surface level explanation for it, or just don't do that. Well, why is that person doing that in the first place? You can't just say stop it, but you have to start asking those questions. Where is this coming from? Dig deeper and deeper, until you can find something. When someone is living in the desert, and so many of us do, and so many of us have, there is an element of I have to cope with this because this is where I am right now. But that's not all there is to that kind of existence. The other level to that kind of existence is taking that dose of reality, of recognizing the fact that, yes, I'm in a desert and this is a horrible place, and I have to somehow endure it. But at the same time, there's more to it than that. And if I can somehow get that dose of whatever that reality is for you, inside of you, and start opening your eyes and realize there is another way. I may have to live to some degree with this in my life, but it doesn't have to be all there is.
And that's a great question that you bring up. Is that all there is? I think that's the big question that people have to ask themselves before they realize that they are in a desert, all alone, and on the other side of the painting, you'll see the wounded heart. Well, that dose of reality came one spoonful at a time. It doesn't come just all at once. It's not like, I just took a spoonful of God's, whatever, God you worship, or you call him the, universe, or God, or Christ, or Buddha, or whatever. Somehow you're going to have to, receive some kind of reality, dose of truth, of reality, which can be painful, but you have to have mercy with it at the same time. You have to have some kind of backing. You have to have some kind of support. You have to have some kind of comfort in that process, or else, you won't, it's very difficult. You won't go. I don't believe you're going to go through it, or you're going to not be willing to go through it, or you're not going to be able to trust, yourself or talk to anybody else about it, to go through this and talk about what I'm talking about. Just to realize the fact that you have a wounded heart, or I had a wounded heart at the time, was really, really important. That was big. That was a big dose of reality. Be like, wow, I really do have a wounded heart. Whether I want it or not, there it is. No, God damn it, I don't want it. Shit. Cursing and, all that, and just being angry at it. But hey, if I need to be angry, then angry, I need to be. I just have to embrace that moment.
Part of the human emotions of reacting to that.
That is part of my,
Of being human.
That's part of me being a real person, a person that matters, a person that matters, or matters to God or anybody else, because there was so little of that in my life for so long. I mean, I just didn't matter. I still don't, I still don't. And I don't care what they say. I still don't matter until they want to come clean about all this stuff. And they didn't. And I mean, or what they did come clean about, it was all manipulation. It was more manipulation just so they could stay, in a sick and twisted, dysfunctional relationship.
So they really didn't come clean. In fact, made it worse, because now there's another layer of obfuscation of that manipulation.
Yes, the whole nother level, and you got to be careful of who you trust, because trust can become a weapon for your enemy to.
If you trust them, now that gives them an opportunity, an opening to abuse you in some way or another, even more.
And then it can get even more. There's more wounding, and there's more anger, and there's more bitterness, and there's more. It can just escalate. So you do have to be careful. But how are you? How are you going to know if you never get it out? You learn as you go. But unless you take a risk like that to get, put your cards out on the table, or put your wounds out, on the table, like, this is what happened, and why. I don't want to blame anybody in particular, but this is what it is right now. I'm hurt, this person's hurt, or where did your hurt come from? That's the reality that I'm talking about.
Now, we've talked about being in the desert, and you've also mentioned a few times on the right side of the painting the fact that your heart is coming up out of your hand, and it is hurt. Pieces of it are gone, are taken away. And I think that's how we end up in the desert, when our heart is so wounded and hurt and damaged that it leads to just being in this desert. And you live your life that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting too, on the heart, I just noticed there's an eye. There's an eye on the heart representing seeing, like a spiritual vision of seeing the wound, seeing your wounded heart, and I'm not trying to be over mystical. I'm not trying to be, an ancient mystic or anything like that. I'm just talking about the application of what it is to understand what truly a wounded heart is, and where it comes from, and how it develops over time, how that got hurt over time.
And I think I've heard the phrase an eye of the heart, or eyes of the heart, and I think that goes along with that even deep down inside you, there's an awareness that something is wrong here. I'm being damaged as the heart, and I can see it. And the person whose heart it is may not be able to see it. But inside, because that's where the damage happens, that's the result of the behavior, is how it affects you deep down inside in your heart. And I think your heart knows that. I mean, because the heart is feeling it directly, that the damage from that abuse. Again, of whatever kind or how much, but Your heart knows it.
Yes. I think, yeah, I remember reading a psalm from David that said that, open up the eyes of my heart so I may see you, so I can see you. I believe, I don't know where that is. I just remember random verses from the Bible. I'm no scholar, that's for sure. But I do know that for me, I mean, okay, you want me to open up the eyes of your heart? Well, you're going to see reality. You're going to see the reality that you're in. You can see me too, in my mercy. Hopefully, and I was able to see it. I could still see it. Thank God, or else I wouldn't be here right now talking about it. And, again, this has nothing to do with any kind of ministry. It's just me and God alone. It's just totally outside of any ministry or church. This is just me and my experience with Him alone. True spirituality. Seeing the fact that I am, okay, Eric, you want to see me, well, you're going to have to see something else too. You have to see some wounds that's happened to you long, long time ago that have been developing over many, many years, and I want to start, healing them. I want you, and then the first part of having those wounds healed, is to realize, to admit that you have them. I mean, I can't go to a doctor, down the road and get my wound stitched up unless I say I've got a wound and I need to go to a doctor. It's that simple, but this is on a deeper level. It's a relational level, a spiritual level, emotional, psychological.
Well, when you talk about a supreme being of some sort, or someone with a lot of insight, they'll see that, especially in the spiritual sense, I guess, that this damage is happening and that it is real and true. And the person whose heart it is can deny it or ignore it or not want to deal with it in some way or another, but it's still there, just like you said. And I know this isn't about AA or 12 steps, but part of that is with your your higher being, is to admit that these things, the higher power, these things are there, these things are true. There are things beyond your ability to cope with it yourself effectively. So you need to rely on your higher power. And that's in essence, in a way, kind of what this is talking about.
It's realizing this is way beyond me to understand, to cope with by myself. And it doesn't mean that I need somebody, else necessarily, but it's really saying, oh, I need, God. I need, Himself. I need a spiritual being that is greater than myself or anybody else in this world to help me with this one, or else it's not happening. I'm going down,
It's kind of like getting an X-ray or an MRI or something, and you might look at it and go, okay, well, whatever that is, I don't know, but a doctor will look at it, and a doctor knows exactly what that image means. He knows exactly what's healthy and not healthy. And I think that's how I kind of see the Supreme Being, seeing the condition of your heart and your life. It's like Him looking at an X-ray or an MRI and being able to identify exactly what's wrong. And you as a patient, you're oblivious to much of that. Maybe you have a pain here and there, or whatever the reason was you came in to have that done, but you don't know what's going on. But the one who knows more than you knows exactly what it is. So on a spiritual and even psychological sense, that's what they can help do, identify, if you, as a patient, are willing. I was talking to a guy the other day and talking about his brother who has some kind of precursor to cancer, possibly, and he does not want to deal with any of it. And his doctor let him know, hey, your PSA is up, or whatever it was. You need to do something, and he just refuses to. So on a psychological and spiritual level, also as human beings, and when we have these relational abusive behaviors that are thrust upon us, we can act like, oh, I'm better than that, or I don't need help. or I just don't want to know. I'm just going to go live my life and not worry about it. It's there and it's real and it has an effect on you. And let's get real. Let's have that dose of reality.
Yes, has a long-lasting, an everlasting effect even.
Especially because as the abused, when you ignore it like you do, so often the next step then is for you to pass that on to someone else or the next generation. Now you become the abuser. If you don't deal with it, if you don't take that dose of reality and deal with it honestly, then oftentimes it's just passed down. You can't just hold that in.
Or if you do, I believe that you're going to self-destruct, or you possess self-destructing characteristics now, or you just want to cover that, and you isolate yourself from others, and that can be a form of serious neglect towards other people, and a lack, not to mention a lack of befriending, having friends, or just developing friendships or just real relationships with other people.
Right, and not only for your well-being, but for their well-being. I know that there are times when a family member has withdrawn like that in depression or whatever it is, and they just don't talk to hardly anybody other than if they absolutely have to. And their family is worse off because they don't get to talk to that person. They don't get to have that person in their life. And they don't get to have what that person has to give to their life. So it's not just yourself that you're hurting. But as they say, the family of man, you're hurting everybody around you by not contributing to someone else's life. So that's a big deal too.
And that's just not the way it was meant to. I don't believe it was meant to be. That's the problem with that. It doesn't work very well. If your relationships break down, or your friendships it's not just marital relationships which break down. There's all kinds of family relationships that break down. Neighborhood or whatever, just people that you work with. There's all kinds of people that, if those break down as well, you're a part of it going down. You're a part of it being neglected or hurt, or
you're part of that weight that pulls everybody down.
You become, gravity in a bad way, in a horrific way, or just I'm not so.
Rather than being uplifting and hopeful and giving life, giving breath to a relationship, to another person that really needs it, then it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's taken away, or you're isolated from it, which is not the direction I want to go in, and I don't think other people really do as well.
Is there anything else about the painting that you'd like to? I noticed, I don't know if it means anything in particular, but there's a skull from on there. There's something dangling from the horn.
Yeah, so there's I guess a longhorn skull, kind of cow skull, in the desert. As you see, it's just iconic imagery that I use sometimes. And I believe I just started reading or looking at Salvador Dali paintings, and that inspired me to do that kind of imagery or symbolic imagery. I love Salvador's, even though it has nothing to do with what he goes in a different direction. He goes all different directions, spiritual directions, which is definitely not really similar to what I believe probably, or the direction that I was going in with this, but it's still, you could still use it, a little piece of it, and hanging from the skull, the cow skull or the longhorn skull is a broken clock, which symbolize lost time or broken time, shattered time, of your childhood. That just, see, when you see this kind of reality, you realize that you lost your child. You lost your childhood. That was the hardest thing, and it still is. You can't get that back, but is there any kind of hope for developing something else in place of it? Yes. There is, but it seems very far-fetched at the time, especially when you're in pain. And that's what that clock, that lost time, represents. And, that was a big part of the concept behind that, the meaning behind this, the dose of reality painting.
Well, that's an amazing, amazing painting, and I'm really glad that you painted it and shared it, and would want to talk about it today. I just think that there's a lot of insights just about humanity and how you have married your experience in life with the paint on the board and how you represent that. So
it was interesting too that you say that. That I'm glad you're willing to talk about it, because I remember being in the Crossroads in from 2006 to 2009 about. I was there for a few years in a studio. I kept on painting after that, and I still am today, which is great, but not in a studio like that. It was a really excellent time to be in a creative place to really get the creative juices flowing inside me. But I remember after finishing a piece, especially this piece, people would ask me, look at me and be like, whoa, I don't even know if I want to ask you what that means, because it was so intense, and it is. But when some people did ask me what it was, I would just be able to talk about a little bit about it. I wouldn't be able to go into detail and be relaxed enough or be peaceful enough to talk about it in its entirety like I am now with you. That's what's interesting. This takes a while to get comfortable with, or to understand, or to be okay with. And I would just be like, yeah, well, the heart is, that's my wounded heart. And they look at me and I'd be like, well, why is there smoke coming out of it with bats? I'm like, well, that's just kind of the darkness part of it, it's just a nocturnal thing. And, meaning what, okay, but I wouldn't talk about like, oh, the bat has a piece of my flesh, and it's, heart flesh, and that represents my, that my mother tearing me to shreds, or my father tearing me to shreds, or, any of that. I didn't go into detail about it as much because some people didn't want to hear it. Some people might have been interested in it. Some people looked at it and got it, but not a lot. I wouldn't say more than not. People were like, oh, it's kind of cool, but it's really kind of way beyond me.
it does. I mean, it's not an organic landscape. You can't look at it and point to a piece of it and say, oh, that's a tree, or that's a fence, or that's a cow. No, this is well beyond that.
Yes, very much so. And I'm using it as a cathartic, therapy for me, basically. I'm not using it to sell paintings. And, the guy that was in charge of, I think his name is Jeff, I don't know if he would have liked my idea of using, his place for art therapy, but hey, you know what? It's different. And it still holds after all this time. 20 years later, to me, that painting is stronger than ever to me. It means more than ever. And that's what's good about doing stuff like this. Meaningful pieces like this. Like, I didn't paint to sell, If I painted to sell, I probably would have, been able to sell some more. But this, this is not that. This is not for that kind of purpose. This is for the purpose that we are in right now, talking about what we are. That's what this is for.
Well, it's an amazing piece, and I'm glad to be able to see it and to talk to you about it. So,
thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.